Chulainn, the Hound of Ulster, Ireland's greatest epic. Close your eyes for a moment. Forget the Ireland of paved roads, city lights, and bustling tourists. Strip away the centuries until you are left with nothing but the raw green earth, the grey stone, and the iron cold sky. This is the Ireland of the Ulster, the men of Ulster. A time when a man's worth was measured by the sharpness of his spear and the length of his memory. I've told you of the spirits that haunt our nights, the banshee and the puka. But tonight we talk of a man, or rather, a creature who is half man, half storm. He is the sun god's son, the defender of the north, and the greatest tragedy our folklore has ever produced. His name was Sétanta, but the world remembers him as Chulainn. The history of the Hound doesn't begin with the sword, but with a question. A young boy sat among the druids at Macha and asked what the omens said for the day. The druid Copped looked into the fire and whispered, "Whoever takes up arms this day shall have a fame that outshines the stars, but his life shall be short as a winter's day." Sétanta didn't hesitate. He grabbed the nearest spear and laughed. "I care not if I live but a single day," he said, "so long as my name remains after me." He got his wish, and today, 2,000 years later, we are still speaking his name. This is the full tragic epic of the Hound of Ulster. Part 2. The Killing of the Hound. Before he was the Hound, he was just a boy with a talent for the hurley. At the age of 7, he was invited to a feast hosted by Chulainn the smith. But Sétanta was late. He was busy finishing a match with other boys. When he finally arrived at Chulainn's fortress, the gates were barred. To protect his wealth, Chulainn had unleashed his guard dog. This wasn't a pet. It was a monster brought from the east. A beast with the strength of 10 men and jaws that could snap a spear shaft like a twig. The guests inside heard a terrible roar, followed by a silence that chilled their blood. They rushed out, expecting to find the boy's remains. Instead, they found Sétanta standing over the dead monster. He had killed it with nothing but a slither and his bare hands. The smith was heartbroken. "That dog was my brother," he cried. "He was the shield of my house." Sétanta looked the man in the eye. "If you have no dog to guard your gate, then I will be your dog. Until a pup is grown and trained, I will be the shield of your house." And so the druid Copped stepped forward and gave him his true name, Chulainn, the Hound of Chulainn. It was his first step toward the grave and his first step towards immortality. Part 3. The training at the edge of the world. Chulainn was not satisfied with being a mere soldier. He wanted to be a weapon. To do that, he had to leave Ireland. He travelled to the Isle of Skye, to the land of shadows. There, in a fortress of iron and bone, lived Scotch, the legendary warrior woman who trained only the elite. She didn't make it easy for him. She forced him to walk the bridge of the leaps, a magic span that would buck like a wild horse and throw any unworthy man into the sea below. Chulainn didn't just walk it, he leaped across it in a single bound. For years, he trained under the cold Scottish moon. He learned the secrets of the Goabulg, the spear of the thorn. It was a terrifying weapon made from the bone of a sea monster. Once it entered a body, it would open 30 barbs, making it impossible to remove without cutting the person open. It was a weapon of one hit, one kill. But more than the spear, he learned the warp-spasm. This is the part of the legend that most people find hard to hear. In battle, Chulainn would transform. His body would twist inside its skin. One eye would sink into the skull while the other swelled to the size of a saucer. His hair would stand on end, tipped with fire. A hero halo of blood would erupt from his head. He was no longer a man. He was a force of nature. And it was during this time he met Ferdia, his half-brother. They trained together, ate together, and swore they would never lift a hand against one another. It is the most beautiful friendship in our lore, and the most devastating foreshadowing of what has to come. Part 4. The Cattle Raid and the Warp-spasm. When Chulainn returned to Ireland, he found his province in peril. Queen Maeve of Connacht had marched her armies north. She wanted the brown bull of Cooley, the most powerful beast in the land, simply because her husband had a better bull than she did. Thousands of men died because of the queen's pride. Through a curse of the goddess Macha, all of the men of Ulster fell into a deep sleep. All except one. Because of his divine blood, Chulainn was immune. For months, the 17-year-old boy stood alone at the ford. Every day, Maeve sent her greatest champions to kill him. Every day, Chulainn sent their heads back to her. He was the wall that the entire army of Connacht could not climb. He fought in the freezing rain. He fought while his wounds bled into the river. He even fought his own half-brother, Ferdia. Maeve tricked Ferdia into the duel, telling him that Chulainn had called him a coward. The battle at the ford lasted 3 days. On the 4th day, Chulainn was forced to use the goabulg. As Ferdia lay dying in his arms, the Hound wept. "It was all a game, Ferdia," he whispered. Until it wasn't. He had saved Ulster, but he had lost his soul in the process. Part 5. The Standing Stone and the Raven. Every sun was set. Maeve, defeated and humiliated, gathered the children of the men Chulainn had killed. She used dark magic and poisoned spears to trap the Hound. As he rode to his final battle, she saw a washer at the ford, a spectral woman washing blood-stained clothes in the river. He knew then it was his own blood. He was struck by a spear that spilled his entrails onto the grass. But Chulainn would not die lying down. He crawled to a large standing stone and used his own belt to tie himself to it. He wanted to face his enemies, standing up, even in death. For 3 days, the army of Connacht stayed back. They were terrified. Even though he was silent and pale, they thought it was just another trick of the warp-spasm. They only dared to approach when a large black raven landed on his shoulder. It was Morrigan, the goddess of war. Only when she perched on him did they know the Hound of Ulster was gone. He died at 27. He had the fame he wanted, but at the cost of everyone he ever loved. When you walk the fields of Louth today and see these old standing stones, don't just see rocks. See the man who stood against an army. See the boy who chose the short life of glory over a long life of silence. There is something very Irish about the story of Chulainn. It isn't a happy ending. It's a story about the price of honor and the tragedy of war. It teaches us that even the greatest heroes are fragile, and that the loudest names often belong to the quietest graves. I hope you enjoyed this deep dive into our greatest epic. It took a lot of heart to put this one together, and I'm glad you were here to listen. If you want to keep the flame of these stories alive, please subscribe and share this with someone who needs a bit of the old world today. I've been your host, the Irish Narrator. May your own path be clear, and may the road rise up to meet you. Until next week, when we look at the gods who came before us, stay safe in the shadows.